This next video is going to be called Gameness Revisited Again. It's always a hot topic, and I'm going to cover different facets of it, or different, examples from different species, different breeds. Nothing meant for legal purposes, all history. I'm speaking in the past, even though sometimes it sounds like I'm speaking currently. I'm not involved with the breed anymore, or any animals anymore. It's history, knowledge, experience, opinion. So, and where this came from was, I follow stuff online, and you hear people making comparisons that are not just or not correct. Gameness is not a blanket term where whether it's a person, animal displaying gameness for their function or what they're doing, it can be different from something else displaying it in a different manner. With pit bulls, gameness is like the heart and soul of the breed. Competition is the soul of the breed, or was in the past. There I go again. Because that's the proving ground. All of the factors taken into account at some point, and not every time you're going to see that display of gameness. And just because one dog quit in the past and the other one didn't, that didn't mean the other one was game. That's not true. So for me, gameness, everybody has their opinion, has their experience. They can give a description what they think. For me to save the having to go through the argument or explaining it in detail, a lot of ways, different ways that you can explain it. For me, it was whatever's going on, as long as my dog was trying to finish their opponent, that was good enough for me. Whether they're head, behind, rattled, hurt, on top, whatever. As long as they're trying to finish their opponent, that's the greatest display of gameness that I could expect from them. Like I said, everybody has their opinion. Not everybody agrees with me. And if you know what gameness is, you don't question it. You have to see it over and over again. You have to experience it over and over again to understand it. If you don't know what it is, you're going to be looking your whole life and you'll never find it. If that makes any sense. So with the dogs, again, what I'm seeing sometimes is people taking something, whether it's a pit bull or another breed of dog, and saying that gameness is the same. For example, a catch dog. They can be game against a hog, but they may not be game against another dog. That hog is prey. And the animals, as they're engaging, they get these signs and signals and senses from each other. And in my opinion, I think that the catch dog, whatever kind of dog it is, whether it's a pure pit bull or a mixed or crossed ways or developed, bred for that purpose, understands that that animal is prey. They're the hunter, they're the predator. And for the most part, they realize that hog wants to get away. It doesn't want to engage. If you back it into a corner, it will. And it can severely injure your dog and even kill him. But the intent to stand toe-to-toe in a confrontation is not there for that prey. And they can do that damage because they have those tusks and they have that mouth, and they're generally bigger than the dog, whatever kind of dog it is. It's nothing for a pig to weigh 200, 300, 400 pounds in some cases. But even a 150-pound hog is bigger than most catch dogs. It's bigger even than most Doggo Argentine. Yeah. And a 300-pound hog, I don't know, maybe there are some dog breeds, I've been seeing them online, that are that big, but I haven't seen them be used as catch dogs. So that's a factor. Size matters in that respect. The biggest hog I saw caught with dogs was a 450-pound hog that had 7-inch tufts. One of them came up like they normally do and curved up. The other one was almost straight out, and that's how they measured that one tusk. It was 7 inches long, sharp. You could take a piece of paper on the side, you know, because they're not pointy. The tusks are not generally not pointy. They're at an angle, kind of, the tooth. You could take a piece of paper and rub it on that tooth, and it would cut the paper. That's how sharp they are. And they're very strong. They're very quick. But again, that's not display in the traditional sense for a pit bull. Pit bull is a one-on-one confrontation. Both of them want to engage. They have ability, they have technique, they have style, they have air, they have strength and speed and power, and all these factors that come into play when you're talking about quote-unquote fighting. With race horses, for example, you have horses that will run themselves to death, and there have been horses where they ran so hard their heart burst. They don't quit. A famous filly back in the day was named Ruffian. She was a top filly at the time, one of the greatest animals in horse racing history. On national TV, as she's running, she broke her leg. And she kept running. They had to physically stop her. She kept running with her broken leg. And again, on national TV, they put her down on camera right there in front of the whole world to see. That's how it was done. That's what they did it. And they do it to end the suffering as quickly as possible. And it was a veterinarian that did it. So racehorses display that. And I've seen horses in my childhood that would fight like they're trying to kill each other. And I did see one kill the other one by biting him, kicking him, and stomping him. He actually knocked him down and stomped on his head and killed him. I've seen horses kick another horse with their back leg, kick him in the temple, in the head, side of the head, and kill him. Those are rare cases. Horses generally don't do that, but anytime you have mammals, part of their survival is breeding, and generally that's when they fight like that because they want breeding rights or territory rights or food rights or whatever it is. But especially with breeding, even deer and elephants. When elephants are in must, or deer are breeding season, they're very aggressive. They'll attack anything. And if you ever seen elephants on TV or whatever, when they're in must, they have a gland on the side of the head, and you'll see it leaking out. They'll be dripping down. That's when they're in must. That's a sign for anybody looking. Don't mess with them. They're a whole different animal. So in horse racing, that's how they display their gameness, by running and not stopping and not quitting even under adverse circumstances. With game fowl, sometimes they connect game fowl with dogs because it's a fight. And my friend Renault Morris made this observation. With game fowl birds, he thinks that it has more to do with sex, dominance, and hierarchy, and breeding rights, and all like that. With chickens, whereas with dogs, it's more in their mind, that confrontation, that will to finish, or that want to dominate the other opponent or beat the other opponent. That was the distinction he made between the two. Now in my area back in the day, they were usually using Mexican short knife It's a curved blade like that. Most of the time they're sharp on both sides. Sometimes it's just the inside. They're about an inch and a quarter long, I think, or an inch and a half. They can do heavy damage. And the difference between the two is, I used to say the steel makes it real, because they're fighting with actual knives, where the dogs is ivory. It's a little bit different. And birds do display gameness. Somebody made the comment, well, birds don't scratch. Yeah, they do. It's called pity. You set them down and one has to cross over to continue to fight, depending on how the rules are. I forget, but game fowl men will know what I'm talking about. Yeah, they scratch. Yeah, they have to show a desire to go back into the fray and continue. But because they have that steel on there, sometimes, most of the time, the fights don't last that long. Sometimes they do. Back then, it was a 20-minute time limit. So if it went 20 minutes, nobody won. It was a draw. But again, they can do severe damage. So a lot of times, you don't get to see that gameness in game fowl because it's over. One shot, sometimes it's done. And I've seen them do that when they're ahead. I've seen them do that off their back when they're behind and losing. It almost bet 10 to 1. The one on the bottom is going to get finished. And he don't. He throws a shot, either it's by desperation or accident or a reaction or a reflex, whatever it is. Boom. The sure loser becomes the winner. But again, I've seen animals, birds that display that gameness, where they do pit them and they do scratch, and they have to display that. With dogs, they could, in the past, they could inflict heavy damage too. But I say this too, a lot of times where you see that gameness in a dog is when they have time to think about it. Meaning in the beginning, there's adrenaline rush, and sometimes they're not thinking about what's going on. They're just doing their thing. They're going at it, and they're taking damage or getting thrown around or beat, out wrestled and overpowered and all this stuff back and forth. And it isn't until they settle down where that endurance and display of gameness can be seen. Meaning they have to think, do I really want to be here? Is this what I want to do? And a lot of times that's where you see dogs quit. And sometimes they'll quit on top. That's why I say they have to display that finish even when they're on top, because some dogs will quit on top, dominating, have the opponent prone, laid out, beat up, in a corner, in the middle, on the side, whatever it is, and just walk away. That's a lack of gameness too. So sometimes when dogs had to think about it, that's where you saw whether they really wanted to be there or not. And there's nothing else like it. And because they don't have knives on them like game fowl, that can take some time. And sometimes the damage is superficial at different times throughout the show, and then it becomes more not so superficial where it's heavy damage inflicted. With hound dogs, same thing. Some of them will run till their pads fall off, or till they're totally exhausted. Which in any case, dogs, chicken, horses, hounds, pit bulls, cat, whatever it is, endurance can become a factor. Because most anything will quit before, from fatigue or even frustration, than they will from pain. But for me, if a dog could take the pain, handle the frustration, and work through the fatigue, they were pretty game, if you want to look at it that way. And you have all these other different, whether it's racing pigeons or fighting bulls or dogs that hunt raccoon or hunt coyote or whatever it is. They show certain displays of gameness. People think because it's a pit bull, they'll just go out and they can kill coyotes and kill raccoons and like that. I've seen them walk away from getting damage on their face or from it taking too long or just the raccoon or coyote putting up the resistance. I won't say it was a game dog that did that, but they were certainly pit bulls that did that. Why do they stop engaging? And you could have some, even if it's a cur, they might fight 20 or 30 minutes before they quit against another dog, but they won't stay 5 minutes with a raccoon. So there's something in the psyche, there's something in the interaction that triggers certain things that either make a dog want to stay and want to finish against a wild animal like a fox or coyote or a raccoon, and there's something in them that makes them not want to. It's conceivable that you could have a game pit bull and he won't stay on a hog for whatever reason. That's not for him. He doesn't like it because the two mindsets are different. Just like you see some game pit bulls, they won't beat up on cur dogs. There's no challenge in it. There's nothing to gain from it. Some don't care. They hit anything, finish anything, it doesn't matter. But there's some that are like that. I saw champion Bad Billy do that. And he was a finisher, a killer. But Bobby had a stray dog in his yard. He stuck him in a shed, brought Billy in there, wanted Billy to kill him because he was on his yard messing. He didn't want any accidental breedings, or he didn't want any accidents of any kind with this cur dog running around his yard. So he caught him, put him in the shed, sicked Billy on him. Billy wouldn't hit him. He ran over, and the dog balled up and curled up like a cur-ass dog, and like we talk about, wouldn't have nothing to do with him, cowed down to him and like that. And to me, it seemed like Billy just felt sorry for him. You know, he just wouldn't hit him. So you get those kind of reactions. I would never call Billy a cur dog because even though he was a deadly finisher, he did display gameness and has lost to Grand Champion Booger, Holt's Grand Champion Booger, in an hour and 35. Displayed great gameness. They had to save his life. So he wasn't a cur. It was just that situation for him was not conducive to his mindset. And he wasn't going to beat up on this poor, helpless being just for the sake of it. You know, dogs are that way. And when you have domestic animals developed for a purpose by human beings, there's certain natures and thought patterns and the way they display them that gives you an understanding of what's going through this animal's mind. So I would never expect a hound dog to fight like a pit bull, but I could almost guarantee that some pit bulls, they couldn't outrun a hound dog. They're not built that way. They don't do that kind of work. So when you say that the pit bull can do everything that any other dog can do, a lot of times that's true. But that doesn't mean they're real good at it. They may not make a good catch dog. You have to be a certain type of individual to be a good catch dog. And I've talked about that in other videos. They may not be the best hunters. You have to be a certain type of individual. They may not be, they couldn't never outrace a greyhound. And are there greyhounds that suffer doing what they do? Yeah. But you wouldn't expect a greyhound to fight like a pit bull or game fowl. Or a greyhound to hunt like a plot hound or a blue tick coon hound. Different functions. But they each, every one of them, have their ways of displaying gameness. So gameness is not a blanket term, no matter what these people online say, and they don't really have an understanding of it. or else they would give their experience with it. Why don't they do that? Why don't they give their experience with each and every individual case where they could explain what was going on, what was the animal doing, why was he doing it, how did he display gameness in that event or that function, and then be able to compare it to other animals like I'm doing here. So it's not a blanket term. People got to get this out of their head. Just like pit bull or bull breeds and all that, that's not a blanket term. Everything isn't a pit bull. And you have to know what a pit bull is to know the difference. Part of that is the lineage. That's why pedigrees can be important. Forgetting all the negative stuff, fake peds and all that stuff, it don't matter. Pit bull, bred to pit bull, year after year, generation after generation. That's a purebred pit bull. You still see people saying, oh, pit bull isn't a pure breed. It's a type. Type of what? What type? Bull breed type? Pit bull is not a Rottweiler. Pit bull is not a hound dog. A pit bull is not a mastiff. And a pit bull, just like any other breed, has other breeds in its background that were used to develop this fighting machine. Just like any other breed had other breeds or other types of dogs or other whatever you want to call it, canines, sometimes even wild dogs, wild canines, to develop that particular breed of dog. So if a pit bull isn't a purebred dog, then neither is any other purebred breed of dog. They're all mixed. They're all types. So that's ridiculous for people to say that. Why do they say it? Because that's what they heard. That's what they've been told. That's what they read by some other person that don't know what they're talking about either. So you have to be careful where you get your information from. Pit bull, that's one of the pit bull myths or name myths, that it's a type of dog. It's not a purebred dog. Yes, it is. Breed was established in 1890s by the UKC. Later included what would become to be the ADBA in 1909. And they've kept as accurate a records as they can of the breed for that 120 years or whatever it is. Before that, they were fighting dogs. And they had enough sense to know that you can't be adding all these different breeds of dogs to a fighting dog and still have a fighting dog. They have to come from fighting dogs at least to be classified as a fighting dog, to be used in the pit, in competition, in sport, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500 plus years ago. It doesn't mean they didn't add something that they think they could help it. But if they did, they still, after making that breeding, still went back to the fighting dog. So that dog Sport, I forget who owned him, but everybody's seen him. He's a white dog, has a slope to his head. He's a perfect example. It's Colby blood on the top. His mother was a pure bull terrier. But in subsequent readings, what did they do with Sport? They bred him to pit bulls. They didn't go back to the bull terrier side. If they did, it was rare and maybe nothing come from it. Maybe it did, but I haven't been able to find any pedigrees, at least in my research, where they went back to the bull terrier side. So whatever reason they used, his mama was a bull terrier in the breeding. You got Frisco Sport out of that. And when they did breed them, they went back to the pit bull side. And that's what anybody with any good sense would do if they put in a hound dog, or they put in a whippet, or they put in all this crap that people say they put in, although they very rarely do they have any facts or information to back it up. They just assume because of the way the dog looks that it's mixed, right, with Frisco Sport, we do have documentation that his mother was a bull terrier. That's why I'm using him as an example. But again, what they do after that, took his pups and bred them back to pit bulls. So anybody doing that with any sense, that's what they would do. They want to throw a greyhound in there because they need air and speed and whatever. Okay, if it worked, they're going to go back to the pit bull side. And that's been done with hound dogs and catch dogs, and now they're mixing greyhounds and whippets and all this stuff. That's just what people do because you're trying to develop an animal for sport. And if something else helps you in that, then you're going to try it. If it works, use it. If it don't. But overall, that animal is going to be a purebred, whatever breed it is. And in the cases where I've had kennel accidents and I've seen other ones, when it's some mix that's put in there, that mix seems to take over the influence, or has more influence than the pit bull side does. Sometimes it don't, but most of the time we get the long hair and thick bushy tail and spindly muzzle and all this stuff. You may have one or two examples where, and maybe they were game and they could use them, or they bit harder, or whatever it was, and it took after the pit bull side. But most of the time it takes after the cur side for whatever reason. So when you see people, because of the way a pit bull looks, saying he's got hound in it, or he's got mastiff in it, or he's got this and that, you got to have some documentation, some proof to back up what you're saying. You can't just assume how the dog looks that it's something that it's not. And that happens a lot with pit bulls because they're built all different ways: head shape, body shape, structure. Because why? Why do they look so different? Because they're bred for function. And within that, you get all kinds of structure differences, behavior differences, fighting styles, different attributes, different flaws to go along with the inbreeding, outcrossing, and line breeding that you're doing. Because they're not bred for looks, they're bred for function. You take bulls that are used in the bullfighting ring. Most people, when you think about them, oh, they're all black and they're built this way and they all do this and that. Well, they're not all black. Some come out different colors. And they're used in the ring. Why? Because it's a bull that is good for that function, and the color don't matter. The horns are shaped different on some of them. Some come up and go down, some go out, some turn up, some turn down, some come inwards. As long as that bull can use his horns for what they are intended to be used for, they don't care how the horns are shaped. Now, most of them are uniform. They are, just like pit bulls. Most of them are uniform. They are. But you can have different looks and different structures and different colors. You're going to have it if you base it on function and not on looks. So that's kind of what upset me about this blanket term about gameness, and the blanket term about pit bull is not a purebred, and bull breeds and all that crap that somebody comes up with because they think they're inventing something new, or they're trying to get attention that they did something or said something or have some information that's inaccurate, but they want to make it accurate to fit their agenda. I went to a show that we had, pit bulls and bullies. And yeah, bullies have pit bull in them. That doesn't make them a pit bull. So the announcer got on the loudspeaker and he said, "One love, one breed." Well, I took offense to it. And I walked up to him and I said, "One love, great. Yep. All got to get along. They're all dogs. We're all dog lovers. But one breed, they ain't even close." Well, you know, bullies have pit bulls. Yeah, they have pit bulls in them, but they're not pit bulls. And you know you're not. So quit spouting that bullshit and making people think, because you're influencing people to think they're the same dog, knowing that they aren't. So don't do that. People get the wrong impression, they get the wrong information, and that's your responsibility. It's your fault. So they're not one breed. One love, okay, that's great. One breed, no. Not ever. And there's nothing wrong with bullies. People like them, people have them, they can have whatever they want. But when you're giving false information to the public, especially now online, like a lot of people do, then some people are going to take offense to it. And some people are going to talk about it like I'm doing here. Nothing wrong with your dog or your horse or your chicken or your pig or whatever doing what it does, and you having it for whatever reason you want to have it. But don't get it twisted. Gameness is not the same in every species of animal. I mean, it's not a crossover term where in one sense it can be used to explain what type of gameness you're talking about. But it's not a blanket term to say it's all the same. It's not. And never has been, never will be, no matter what anybody thinks. So, with that being said, that's where the education comes in. Educate yourself and have a foundation to speak from, and share your knowledge with others. Nobody knows everything. I certainly don't. I'm always learning. And when you have conversations like that, you should be able to talk back and forth, give your opinion, debate. Sometimes it gets a little heated, but don't get that twisted either. It's not that important to be fighting about and cussing each other out. If you can't sit and have a conversation, maybe it's better not to have one. But also, if you can't sit and have a conversation, and you might get insulted or you might get angry, and you don't know how to talk under those conditions, well, maybe you shouldn't have a conversation either. Anytime you have a conversation, you might say something to insult someone, or they might say something to insult you. You have to be able to talk about it. Or else what are you having the conversation for? For clout, for likes, to recognition, talk shit? That doesn't last, and nobody's going to respect you if that's the way you are. And it's a good way to lose subscribers and likes and all that crap if that's what you care about. That has been shown to be proven too. So when we speak about gameness, what are you talking about? Pit bulls? Okay, that's one thing. Catch dog, that's another thing. Hound dogs, racing greyhounds, game fowl, flying pigeons, racing pigeons. They all have their ways of displaying it, and you have to be educated enough to be able to understand it, see it, and explain it. So that's why this is called Gameness Revisited again, because I revisited it in the past. So it's always going to come up. It's always a good topic. I enjoy the comments and the opinions, and we all don't have to agree. So let's hear some of yours. Thank you.